What's up, guys? It's your girl Kia, and on this video we are going to be talking about the new documentary that's out on Prime called Happy Shiny People, and it talks about the Duggar family. And for those of you who don't know the Duggar family, it's from their show 19 Kids and Counting that was on the TLC network that ran all the way from 2008 to 2015. That show then transferred into Jill and Jessa Counting On, and then I think everything was officially canceled, I want to say, in 2019 for a lot of issues that are covered in the documentary, and we are going to go over it. So let's go ahead and get started. This documentary is a long time in the making. Just a little bit of a hint of what we're going to talk about is that the oldest boy of the Duggar family, Josh Duggar, is, for lack of better words, but it's the truth, he's a pedophile. He had sexually abused his sisters it came out that he abused them in 2015. And that got the original 19 Kids and Counting canceled. And then in 2019, it was discovered that he was downloading child pornography. I hate when people give levels to child pornography because it's all bad, but apparently it was extremely graphic, terrifying child pornography. Like, it wasn't just an 18-year-old girl who looks young and now they're making child porn or whatever. It was actual children, and it was very disturbing. And because of that, the TLC cut ties with the entire Duggar family. So that's kind of why this documentary was a long time in the making, because it was just so much stuff that came out. And more stuff ended up coming out about kind of the church the Duggars were under, called Institute of Basic Life Principles. So let's go ahead and jump on into the documentary. So the one thing that I thought was really key with this is that it opens with Jill Dillard, who was formerly Jill Duggar. And she was the oldest girl, and she seemed on the show very pro-family, I'm ride or die for this. I'm all about this family. Even when she moved on to Jill and Jessa Counting On, she filmed her birth, and she kept going with filming, and it always just seemed like, ooh, she loves doing this. And having her sit here and do this documentary, you realize all that was a lie. They really were happy, shiny people. On the inside, there was depression and unhappiness and just disgust. So let's kind of start where it all begins. So the Duggars are a member of Institute of Basic Life Principles. They got into this very, very early on. Jim, Bob, and Michelle met. He introduced her to this kind of lifestyle. She was a cheerleader. She threw all that away to kind of be a fundamentalist Christian. And if you're confused by what a fundamentalist Christian is, honestly, just think Mormonism. Just think Mormonism without multiple wives. It's to me, when I see it, even as a Christian, it's the same thing. It's the same. Girls are meant to be wives and mommies. They don't need an education. Boys are meant to kind of do hard work outside and do all the hard lifting. That's what fundamentalist Christians are. It is. So Jim Duggar, what happened was that he ran to be a state representative. And there was a picture that came out in a newspaper of showing them as a family all lined up together, all in matching dresses, and the little boys having on red ties matching their dad. It was a very cute picture, but having that one image out there, they then got an interview in Parents Magazine, and that is what launched them basically in the stratosphere. That one image of this husband and wife with all these children, you know, the long dresses, white stockings, ew, and high collar shirts is what launched them into everything they are now. So they were originally on Discovery Health. And if you don't remember Discovery Health, a lot of people don't. I kind of remember it because they did surgeries and a lot of health documentaries, a lot of going into rural tribes across, the world and doing surgeries or helping kids with cleft palates. That's what it was originally. And they liked the Duggars because at the time, after having 14 children, Michelle Duggar, the mom, was pregnant with her 15th child, which, having that many children back to back, meaning you've been pregnant since you got married, is interesting to watch. So they had that one special. Then they had about 4 specials after that before they got the reality show in 2008. And this is really what launched TLC into everybody's households across America, because everybody started to fall in love with the Duggars with the first 5 specials. This family was wholesome and cute. And, all the girls were nice, and they cooked, and all the kids were respectful, and they sat there and they talked about fun, cute things. It wasn't anything inappropriate. It wasn't trashy. It was very Norman Rockwell wholesome, and a piece of Americana that people felt like they left behind. Watching the show helped them, get it back and just watch this cute family do dumb stuff. Watch them do, 10 baskets of laundry a day, watching them go to the grocery store. Well, how are you going to do that? And it's the same time that I think John and Kate, I always leave his name off since they got divorced, John and Kate plus 8 launched. It's that same kind of voyeuristic thing of how did they do that with so many kids? And jokingly, people, because of John and Kate plus 8 and the Duggar family, they started calling them the Lurking Channel. And that was mentioned on the show, but I can see that because it made it okay to look in through somebody's window of their home, watch their lives without having the police called on you for stalking. Because really what we are, we're stalking these people. And in the show, they also introduced to Jim Holt and his wife. They're in this documentary. The Duggar parents, Jim, Bob, and Michelle, are not in this documentary at all, but the Holts are, and that would be Jim Holt and Bobby Holt. They had 11 children, and they're featured on the first couple episodes of the show. They're no longer friends anymore, and they go into that in later episodes. And it starts really showing the Christian fundamentalism of it all and how Bob and Jim got into the Institute of Basic Life Principles. Apparently they went to go see Bill Gothard. Yeah, his name is Bill Gothard. They went to go see him speak at a conference. And his program was so appealing because it was so simple. There was no thought to it. It was really just like, God is here, you're here, your wife and children are under you, everybody has to listen to you, and it makes life so much easier. You know, the girls need to be pure, you need to court before you're married, you don't need to date, dating is bad, it's just all about courting, and that just needs to be what it is, and everything will be fine if you just follow these principles and live a very happy, simple life. And again, that little simpleness of the Institute of Basic Life Principles is kind of the same thing that people liked about watching the show. It's just simple. You know, the girls are just sweet and nice and pure, and the boys are just boys, and they just cook and clean and do all this basic stuff, and I just love to watch it. I just love to sit back and watch it. I was not a fan of the show, but I get the appeal. The other thing that's interesting is they go over the quiverful moment, and I was like, what is that? That's a weird word. But apparently Bill Gothard's teaching was when he was asked how many kids you should have, and he said, how many blessings from God should you have? So it just meant that you should have as many kids as humanly possible until your body says stop. No matter what you go through, you should keep having kids. And that's kind of sad because on the show, we actually see it on the show, Michelle on her 20th child has a miscarriage. You know, on her 19th child, excuse me, this is wrong. Yes, on the 19th child, I think it was Josie, she had complications with. She had high blood pressure. She was in huge medical distress the entire delivery, so bad so that Jim Bob was worried that she was going to pass away. So that she was just going to keep having kids until she get pregnant, no matter how dangerous it was. And that just was kind of disturbing to me, that part of the Gothard principle is even if your life is in danger, you should keep having children. Even if let's say you had multiple kids with special needs, you should just keep having children. And it's just odd to me just to tell a woman that no matter what you're feeling, your feelings don't matter. If God gives you a blessing, that's just what it is. And for people who are going to jump on that in my comments and be like, well, that sounds like an abortionist comment. That's not what I'm talking about. If you have been blessed with multiple children and then on your 5th child, you almost die, that to me should say you should stop trying to have children and it's time to implement some kind of birth control or condoms or whatever, because you shouldn't risk your life that takes you away from taking care of the other 5 children that you have. And that's just my thought. So the biggest thing that I thought was so interesting about this is when they started talking about the ATI. So this is the homeschooling program. There was no educational value in this homeschooling program. It was what all the kids did. All the kids were homeschooled. None of them went to regular school. There were a couple of kids that they talked to who apparently had gone to regular school, but when their parent joined this religious group, pulled them out of school for homeschooling. They were not taught math, science, social studies, anything like that. It was strictly Bible focused from Bill Goddard on how to be a better Christian, better child, and then better wife and better husband. It had nothing to do with any real world application where you could be successful, where you could be a functioning human being, basically. Hold on, I'm going back to my notes. So they go over this a little bit. Like, this first episode was really just kind of pinpointing to me different things, how we got here, you know, talking about the homeschooling, talking about them getting on the TLC network and this and that. And the episode actually ends with the last 10 minutes talking about Josh Duggar. And he, between 14 and 15, he was abusing his sisters. And this all comes out because I'm trying to figure out how it all ended up coming out. I got to go back and watch the documentary. Sorry for not remembering it. I was so busy typing this morning and trying to get all my notes down that I forgot how it accidentally came out. But I want to say it was Oprah. Oprah is the one who sent like the Oprah Network staffer sent a social worker over to the house. And they had made an anonymous phone call, but it's the Oprah Network, and sent somebody over to the house. But what actually happened is Josh was abusing his sisters. He was also courting Kaylee Holt, which is the daughter of Jim and Bobby. So when it started to come out that he had done this, the Holts were devastated because they liked Josh. They'd grown up with him and they wanted them to be a couple. So the Holts go to the Duggars and were like, so when did you plan on telling us that he had sexually abused his sisters? And apparently someone used the word molestation in front of Michelle Duggar, and she's like, don't you ever say that again. But that's what it is. It's molestation. And Jim Bob tells Jim Holt, oh, we had no intention on Kaylee ever knowing until after they were married. And Jim and Bobby were like, so you were about to use our daughter as like some carrot to get your son to act right? And to my shock and dismay, and I don't know if this is true, we're just going off what Bobby and Jim had to say. To my shock, the Duggars were like, yeah, we were. And I guess a part of me gets how stupid they are because there was no education, so they didn't know that this is just when you have a sickness of being a pedophile or child molestation. It's not something that just goes away because you're like, okay, cool. You're doing this because you have interest in sex and you can't have sex right now because we only believe in sex before marriage. You know, so we get it. So we'll give you a wife and this will make you stop. This will make it easier for you to deal with this. I get that in that stupid way. But when you, like I said, when you have someone who is dealing with this type of sickness, it does not go away. It is not fixed. It is not healed. It is something, if that person is going to live among society, it's something that person has to work on every single day and kind of live themselves in a bubble to kind of keep themselves from, quote unquote, going off the wagon, because it's not something you can fix. And I feel kind of sad for the Duggars a little bit to think, because I really do think they thought that him getting married would fix it, would stop it. So one of the things that the Holt said, he did something wrong. You guys need to take him to the police station right now. You have always espoused about the sex offender website and how we needed to register sex offenders. I didn't know that's something that Jim Bob had kind of been a proponent of. But Jim Holt was like, well, if this is what you mean and this is what you said, then you need to take him to the police station. So Jim Bob, of course, was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll take him. Let's go. So they go and talk to a police officer there in the local station. Josh lays out some of it. It has never been disclosed what actually happened between what actually Josh did and his sisters. It's always been he touched them over the clothes while they were sleeping. They never knew. But the way Jill Dillard cried and was like, I do not want to talk about this. That wasn't some he touched me at nighttime and my parents had to tell me. That's some I was awake. I said no. I was trying to fight him off. And he wouldn't stop. And even after that night, it happened over and over and over again. Jill is dealing with some trauma, real trauma. And Jess is not on the show. Jill Duggar is not on this docuseries either, but she's come out later. But these girls are dealing with trauma. But that's what they told the cop that day. That it was just, the girls were asleep, little overshirt touching. It'll never happen again. And the police officer, whose name is Boyd, no, his name's not Boyd. I don't have his name written here, but the police officer was just like, listen, you need to stop. Don't ever do this again. And if I find out that you did it again, then I'm going to come down you hard like a ton of bricks. fast forward, this man is now doing 65 years in prison for, child pornography, just like Josh. And to me, this is where you start to realize that Jim Bob Duggar, is he really Christian? Like, what is the Christian values here? And I believe that Jim Bob Duggar knew that that police officer had some kind of crazy, nasty thing in his background. And that's why he went to him, because it was almost like you've been there. You know how this goes. So you'll be easy on him. I don't have to worry about it, which to me makes me think, did Jim Bob ever do anything to his kids? If you're okay with this, if you can sit next to somebody who's had child pornography issues, and you have a son who's dealing with serious sexual issues and abusing his sisters and child pornography issues, this isn't just, I was so horny, I'm reaching out for anybody. This is almost like a learned behavior. And I kind of am looking at Jim Bob sideways for additional reasons, not only for being in this crazy religion and kind of being a jerk, but now I'm also looking at him like, were you teaching your sons that this is just what men do? That it's okay? That your sisters are just here to please men? And not even men that they're married to, but just men in general. Like, what were the lessons that were being learned in the household? And that is what we'll talk about in episode 2, because it goes way more into it. And we also meet more kids who go through this. So outside of just watching the episode, just in general, I just want to say, like, we've seen multiple documentaries where people get into religion and it kind of takes them over and they lose common sense. We see that in the recent Hillsong documentary. We're seeing that here in the Happy Shiny People documentary. We've seen it in Catholicism. We've seen it in Scientology, even though Scientology is a cult. I know. I'm just saying, people get so deep into the religions that they lose their common sense and lose themselves, and then there's no way out. And that's just very dangerous to me. And as a Christian, I get concerned when I hear people so gung-ho about God that they can't think straight. There's one thing to be Christian and have Jesus and God lead your life. Meaning, when something is going wrong, I'm not depressed. I'm not sad. I'm going right to my faith. I'm praying. I'm doing what I need to do and praying and saying, God, I did these 5 steps that I know I need to do. Please make sure these steps go in the right place. I leave it all up in your hands because I did my part. But to have it kind of be like, I'm just going to sit here and pray and not do anything, and that's just what God is, because God will fix everything. God's doing everything. I don't have to even do anything. It's odd to me. Or, even Danae Jackson is also a good example. And I have another video about her. She's so gung-ho about her faith. It almost goes to me into fundamentalism, where everything that comes out of your mouth, there's not even one original thought. It's all God. It's all Jesus. It's all Bible verses. It's all regurgitation. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's no real soul to what you're saying. Like, I keep saying I am a Christian. And I have a soul and I have a personality, and I can meld these two things together. And that makes me proud. That's who I am, that I can meld my faith and be me and give that out to the world. When I see other people like the Duggars and some of the people who followed on Hillsong and Danae Jackson and some of the people who follow her, it's just, there's nobody there. It's just a Bible. It's just a Bible and someone is reading off a bunch of verses. And maybe that's a separate video that we can discuss. But I think this documentary so far, episode 1, very well done. A lot of information that I did not know. Oh, one side note that I didn't know about the Duggars is that the parents, Michelle and Jim Bob's parents, the grandparents, did not want them to have all these children. So this makes me think that this whole IBPL thing started with Jim Bob and Michelle. It wasn't like something they brought down. It was something that they did separately. And the grandparents were just kind of like, we just love our grandkids. We're just here to be with our grandkids. Another cute thing is Amy, their cousin, who I guess is like the wild child, even though she's not a wild child. She was a regular little kid. But when you compare her to the Duggar kids, because she was Jim Bob's sister's daughter, who went to school and would sneak away from recess and go play with her cousins and everything and wave at them and feed the cows and all that kind of cute stuff. She wasn't the wild child. But again, when you compare that to a Duggar daughter and Amy was basically out here like Amber Rose with tattoos on her forehead compared to these girls. And it wasn't really like that. So we actually see her in the documentary. She's in all of the episodes talking about her family and the experience and what she saw from an outsider looking in, because technically, even though she was related to them, she was an outsider. So take a look at the first episode if you haven't watched it. It is on Amazon Prime, so if you have Prime, it's free. You don't have to download a new app or network, which I appreciate. I'm glad it's just on Prime. Check it out. Drop down in my comments if you have any thoughts about the documentary. Drop in my comments if you have extra tidbits about episode 1 that I missed, because again, this is my first time reviewing a documentary, so I'm bound to miss some things. So I will see you next time. Bye.